Tonight we're delighted to have a very special speaker. Dr. Neve Shaw is pretty unique amongst our astronomy speakers, I think. She started off as a scientist and engineer. She has degrees in that subject, in fact a PhD. But she's always had an interest in acting. And those of you who are Fair City fans, I won't ask for a show of hands on that one. In 2007, 2008 may have seen her on TV. She's done other TV movie appearances as well, I think. Yep. So an accomplished actress in her own right after being a scientist. But then she's got a passion for space. You may have seen her talk about this on the Late Late Show, on the Tommy Tiernan Show, and on countless other shows as well. We've been trying to get her to talk for Astronomy On for a while, and we're absolutely delighted that she can come along and talk to us this evening. She's the artist in residence at the Blackrock Castle Observatory in Cork. She's given talks to the European Space Agency, to NASA, InspireFest, New Scientist. She's the 2018 co-recipient of Outstanding Contribution to STEM Communications, awarded by our own Science Foundation Ireland. And she's recently spoken at Ars Nucleon to the President about science on International Women's Day. So we have a very accomplished speaker to give a very interesting talk about what she's been doing nearly on Mars, life on Mars-ish. Please give a very warm welcome to Dr. Neve Shaw.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll put this on here. No, that's great. I'll put this in my pocket. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to set up my my projector, or my slides, should I say. 2 seconds. Yeah, that should be up. Yeah, lovely, great. Thank you. Firstly, is Tom here from Astronomy Ireland? Is Tom here? Tom's based on the West Coast, but he works remotely for us. Yeah, so I want to apologise to him because I was supposed to be here in December 2018, and at the very last minute I got an opportunity to go to Kazakhstan to see the re-entry of Alexander Gerst's Soyuz capsule, and I let Astronomy Ireland down in December, and I apologise, and for that I have these. I was going to give them to Tom, but I'm not. I'm going to pass them around. I think there is one for everyone, so we'll start with you, Dave, and you just pass them along. So I'm trying to promote you because I did let you down last December. So am I forgiven? Yay! Excellent, brilliant. Second apology, Alan, you'll have heard this millions of times before, and I do apologise. So I know Alan well. We bump into each other a lot at different activities. So I'll just start my beginning slide before I start yappering. So yeah, I'm sure there's hands of people who are from a science or a technology related background in the room, and hands up who aren't. Okay, so 50-50. Okay, cool. So I just assumed that everybody was going to be, you know, above me. So that's great. So I'm going to speak to you about something quite different from what your normal lectures are. I'm very much about trying to humanise science, which is why it kind of explains why I've had this kind of bizarre career. I'll explain all that. And there's one aspect of what I've been participating so far, which was the time I spent in the middle of the Utah desert on a simulated Mars mission. So I'll focus on that in isolation, but I'll give you kind of an overview of everything. And I picked that because I felt that it would kind of meet the needs of the whole room. So I hope that's okay. And as Dave told you, I am a speaker. I do a lot of outreach and what's known as public engagement, which is where we kind of promote science for different events and activities. And I seem to have a gift of the gab. So I like talking to people. It's my favourite form of communication. And I have spent many years in search of what I'm supposed to do with my life. And after a lot of segues, I realised that it's all of it put together in some weird, strange package, and that's who I am. And it first kind of started to emerge, as Dave said, after, you know, I've 2 degrees in engineering and a PhD in science. And I realised very early on in my academic career that this just wasn't for me. I'm too much of a talker. That fastidious mind required for full-time research just isn't a skill of mine, and I needed to be out and talking. So always being a creative, I became an actor for a while, and that didn't fulfill me either. And so I realised I was this weird, bizarre combination of both. And it began making theatre first. So I've written and performed in 3 theatre shows so far, and out of that, everything emerged and blossomed. And I gave myself permission to go on a mad, crazy journey to see what happens when a woman in her 40s decides she wants to go to space. And that's really everything I do now is about that in some way. And this picture kind of encapsulates it for me in its entirety. If I could click my fingers and create the life that I want, I would do that. Obviously I'd have to be wearing a spacesuit, but stand on the moon and see the Earth in its entirety. And that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to do it artistically as much as scientifically. And it's about questioning really the goals we set ourselves in our lives, and wanting more, and why not wanting more, and why not spending the rest of your life trying to do something that's practically impossible, and see how far you get when you commit 100% to it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm conducting this life experiment as a communicator, someone who's a talker, who loves science and space, but also somebody who's very human and wants to share the whole thing from start to finish. So everything that I've been doing since I finally put all these pieces together is about that, whether it's theatre, whether it's speaking to corporates, whether it's talking to you, whether it's going to schools, whether it's performing, whether it's writing, it's all about that. And so I want to explain that to you first before we continue. So we have to start at the beginning. And I grew up in a house where this obviously inspired me and many of us, I'm sure, in this room, which were the moon landings. And Dad worked in General Electric. That's a picture of him from the 70s, with his kick-ass sideburns and dark shades. And so he worked in an American company. He worked for General Electric, and he tells us the story that the day after the moon landings, they were all taken to a hotel. I'm from Dundalk. They were all taken to the Queen's Hotel, which is in Park Street, as far as I know. Anyone here from Dundalk? No, God, I think it's in Park Street. And they were shown a movie of it, and he would tell that story, and in my strange head I thought Dad was in mission control in Houston. And so to me, you know, space was just like an integral part of our lives, and this is Dad now. And I also grew up in a house where our common bond was really science and space. So we all watched Doctor Who together, sometimes behind the couch because I was afraid of Daleks. Star Trek, not so much Star Trek, but I kind of, the Next Generation I liked, but the first series not so much. And Blake 7, and then, you know, Star Wars when they came out in the cinema, like many of us, right? And it was just feeding it all. And Dad had a subscription to the National Geographic, and sometimes you'd get those pull-out posters, you know, like usually like the kings and queens, like yawn off the Tudors or something, but the odd one would be science. And I remember one of our nearest neighbours in our galaxy, and Alpha Centauri and all these things, and I would just stare at it for hours and hours and hours. And my older brother John would bring an encyclopedia to bed. That's the kind of person he was. Anyone who doesn't know what an encyclopedia is, it was kind of like the internet in a book. And he was just a mine of information. He fed my thirst for knowledge in a way that I understood. So very confident in science and logic. You know, as a child, everything was very fact-based and logical. I would change plugs, you know, I would read a manual from back to back. This is a typical diary entry. The reason I have it up there is I wrote it when I was about 11 or 12, and it would generally just be a catalogue of all the different exams that I sat and what I got, and always what time I went to bed at, because I would monitor what time I went to bed at, and then every month I would work out an average time of going to bed. And then on New Year's Eve, as everyone else was ringing in midnight, I was figuring out my bar chart for my annual average time of going to bed and checking out the trends. Was there any month where I went to bed later than others? Wah! You know, crazy me. So that was the brain that I have, still have. Love information, love logging things and everything. We moved around a lot. My mum is from a traditional Irish music family, so we would have been encouraged to get up and perform and write and sing and always have your party piece. And we moved around a lot. So there's my family. We're a family of 4. Tom was the lucky one, he's not the ginger. So when you move around a few times, we moved around a lot, being a ginger is not cool, not that it ever is, but it's certainly less cool when you move around a lot. And also I learned that gingers in packs are far more vulnerable than gingers on their own. So I realised that it was safer for me to go down the town on my own than with my brother and sister. We just like stood out like a sore thumb. So this is my family, and our connection is science. That's how we all show our understanding of each other and how we all kind of communicated. Science first and everything else second. And in one of those encyclopedias when I was about 8 or 9, around the time of seeing Star Wars, and there was the children's encyclopedia, I could cope with that. John had the adult one. And I remember seeing that picture. I was about 8 or 9. I'll never forget. I remember seeing that picture and going, what is that? Not realising for a while that it was Earth. And when I saw it, I went, I want to see that. I want to see that in my life. I want to see Earth from a distance. And it never left me. And I showed those diaries earlier not only to explain how important it is to log what time you go to bed at, but also that I've always kept diaries. And at different phases of my life, when I've been in the middle of engineering and I've wanted to leave because this creative part of me takes over, or in my 20s when I felt like I didn't know where I was going next, I would always write these lists of what I really wanted to do if I could do anything. An astronaut was always there. And when I was writing my theatre shows, I had all these diaries to look back on, and I hadn't realised how much that had been a constant in my life. I always felt that it was something that I kind of said at parties to be cool, but I never realised that it actually was a deep need in me. So we're making my first show, putting all these parts of me together, very embarrassed that I'm this bizarre mix of all these different creative and science and engineering parts. And I was looking at my life choices, and wanting to be an astronaut came up, and just exploring it, I won't go into the show, but exploring it made me realise that the need was still there, and I was very disappointed in myself that I had never made any attempt whatsoever to pursue it. I'd never really properly even studied astronomy. I ran away from physics, I ran away from all the subjects that could have taken me there. I didn't know much about the European Space Agency. I'd never really heard about a female astronaut apart from vaguely about Valentina Tereshkova. And I was really ashamed of myself because I had always been somebody who kind of said that, you know, I was always a brave person. I always kind of confronted anything that I was afraid of. And it's not true. I was a big fake. And as an artist, at a moment like that, it's a great gift because you have an opportunity to use it as the fuel to explore creatively. And so it started creatively, and my second show, To Space, was about me kind of saying I want to go to space and I don't know what to do about it. And that show premiered in 2014, and when it finished, I thought that by just acknowledging it, it would go away, but it didn't. It kept getting bigger, and I kept waiting for somebody to say, don't be so stupid, go away, but nobody did, and people kind of liked it and kind of encouraged me to keep pursuing it. And different opportunities started to emerge, and I got to go on the Space Studies programme, and different things have happened along the way, and I'll tell you now about the Mars one. So it was really interesting how it happened, and it has just been like walking forward slowly every step, and kind of just not really knowing where I'm going, but just knowing that every day I still want to go to space, so I have to keep doing this in some shape or form. And it's never going to be as a formal astronaut, and I get really uncomfortable about anybody describing me as such, because I really don't feel I deserve that term, and I really feel that if I achieve this, it won't be as an astronaut, because I won't be on constant missions. This will be something that I will do for a short period of time. I will absorb it and I will bring it back down to communicate it, and that's the purpose of it. I think what astronauts do is far more altruistic and far more generous of their time. Like, they give up a whole they give up everything for something, really to be the custodians of our thirst for knowledge and our curiosity. I don't have that bravery, I don't have that ability. My engineering degrees aren't good enough, I'm not physically fit enough, I'm too old, but I am a good communicator, and I really do want to see what happens when I put that out to the world. So that's the plan in its entirety. So to put that in context, just from the human point of view, let's just talk about how quickly things are happening. And the more we hear about different missions that are happening, and for us, all of us that are passionate about space, we can all keep on top of it. But for people who aren't engaged in science, and they're the people that I'm always trying to connect to, there's an awful lot happening and an awful lot of things happening that they aren't aware of, so we don't know what the general population thinks and feels about all these different activities that are happening. So without them knowing, we have to be careful, I feel, about where we're going in the future. So we have the International Space Station, obviously, and that's more or less kind of winding down from what we hear. There's talk of it being decommissioned around 2024. Possibly then there's an opportunity for people like myself to get up there, because more and more tourists will be able to go up as costs go down. But they feel that they've kind of done as much as they need to do on the International Space Station. It is effectively a space lab, and we've learned an awful lot about the effects of microgravity and weightlessness, and been able to apply that technology to new innovations that can help us down on Earth. And it's really interesting. For such a long time there was really only like two key players. There was really only NASA and Roscosmos for years and years and years, and in the last kind of 5 years we've seen all these private companies come in, like SpaceX and other smaller space agencies, like the Israeli Space Agency nearly managed to get their spacecraft on the moon last year with Bereshit. I mean, they dropped a load of tardigrades, thanks very much, in their payload. But and the one I was most fascinated with was when the Indian Space Agency had their Vikram lander almost land on the moon last year as well. These really small space agencies are doing their work is just as good as these big players that we've heard of, you know, NASA and Roscosmos. We've heard about them for years, and of course we know that China has landers on the moon and everything. So where is it all going? Well, after Apollo 50, you know, NASA made a massive public bid to say, well, we're definitely going back to the moon. And everybody's talking now about the Gateway, the Gateway, the Gateway, the Gateway. The Gateway is the next space station, which is going to be orbiting in a rectilinear orbit, which is a kind of orbit like that around the moon. It won't be permanently manned, it'll be manned in phases, but it will always have scientific experiments taking place. And the first expedition will be an all-American expedition called Artemis, where there will be 4 astronauts going and hanging out in Gateway. 2 will go down and the other 2 will man it. And then once they do that, once they call that footprints and flags, which is what they call it, then it gets opened, and the partners that are involved in the International Space Station, which would be the Canadian Space Agency, ESA, ourselves, NASA, Roscosmos and JAXA, Japanese Space Agency, they seemingly will have a stake in that. And we had the ministerial there in November from the European Space Agency, which is where different European partners that are member states of the European Space Agency staked their bid in what they wanted ESA to focus on for the next 3 years, and everything that was required and requested of in relation to going forward with the Gateway mission has been sanctioned. So we will be involved in Gateway, which means that we will possibly have a European on the moon in the next, I don't know, 10 years maybe, I don't know. And after that, after this period of missions where they'll be dropping humans down back and forth, ultimately what we're going for is a permanent habitat on the moon, not necessarily for colonization or for civilians to live on, but again to be like a science and research centre. And this is where it gets really interesting, you know, and there's a few proposed habitats that have been submitted by architects from the European Space Agency, and on and on and on. And then, of course, we have SpaceX with its beautiful designs of rockets talking about going to Mars and to the moon, and we've seen their Crew Dragon go up to the International Space Station a few times. We've seen their Falcon X, we've seen their Heavy Falcon, and I attended the Astronaut Congress in Washington late last year, where it's the who's who of industry and research and all the key players who attend this Congress. It's a World Congress, and they were all there staking their claim and bragging about what they're going to do next. And there was one particular session which I thought was really interesting, was the one where all of the private companies got up and talked about what they're doing. And we had Blue Origin talking about their new lunar lander as part of Gateway and the Artemis mission for NASA. And that was a mock-up of the lander that was there at the Astronautical Congress. And then that's the full layout. I got that from NASA. That's the full breakdown of what Gateway is going to be like after they do their footprints and flags piece. So for Gateway, the first one, the Artemis, is just going to be a basic model, and then ESA and all the different partners get in and they add their modules in much the same way as the International Space Station. And this is where it's going. You know, we're doing that. We're spending time on the moon because ultimately everybody wants to go back to Mars. Everybody wants to have a manned mission to Mars. And in order to do that, we have to make mistakes, and mistakes are safer to happen on the Moon, which is only a 2 to 3 day mission away, rather than the Mars, which is between a 7-month to 2-year mission away. I love all this. Believe me, I do. I love it. I want to see human footprints on every single celestial object that's in our planetary system and our solar system and beyond. And I was very lucky at the same Congress in 2016 to be in attendance in the second row when this man stood up, Elon Musk, and unveiled his big, grand designs to colonize Mars in the next 100 years. And it was incredible how much he had broken it down by engine design, by rocketry, by cost, everything. I mean, it was just like, yum, 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 yum. For engineers and scientists, we just like lap it up. It was gorgeous, beautiful information. I got really excited, everybody got really excited. I love it. However, the artist part of me, the humanist part of me, believe me, I love technology and I love seeing things happen. But I do get worried because I think about the people that don't know anything about space. Like some people believe that we still didn't land on the Moon, and we have an awful lot of educating to do, and we have an awful lot of outreach and public engagement to do to try and make space relevant to the general population. Because these decisions have massive societal and cultural impacts on all of us. You know, there's ethical issues, there's issues about decisions to terraform our planet. I'm not sure how I feel about that, and the cost and everything. So I'd rather we would be a species that is aware of all these technologies as much as possible. And it drives me a huge amount in what I do. And there's not enough time to tell people. And my next mission is a massive part of trying to tell as many people as I can about space, how great it is, but also we need to talk about it. You know, we really need to talk about it on a government level, on a policy level, and on a societal level. Anyway, as part of that, along the way, I attended the Space Studies programme, which thankfully a lot of Irish people have now who are interested in space. We've heard of some of them. And in my year, which was 2015, we were in America. And for those of you who don't know, the Space Studies programme is a partially scholarship programme for Irish people. You can get a scholarship from the European Space Agency if you want to go. And you spend 9 weeks living intensively with about 120 other people who all share your passion for space and normalise that quest and that dream, and had a massive impact in normalising what I wanted to do with my life. But there's people there far more qualified than me. They're all about 20 years younger than me, and they already have quite established careers in studying geology of Mars, or astrobiology, which is the biology of living systems in extreme conditions. And in my particular year, The Martian, the book, The Martian, was going around, and everybody wanted to set up an analogue mission together. And this group was set up, and I remember applying in the Google form going, yeah, I want to go, but like, I can go as an artist and document it for you, but I don't know anything I can do apart from that. I didn't think anything more about it. And we finished in, I think, August 2015. And by the end of 2015, it was time to fill in an application to go to one of the analogue facilities in the world. So analogue facilities are facilities that allow you to pretend you live off Earth, either on the Moon or on Mars. The one that we applied for was a Mars one, and we applied to the Mars Desert Research Station, which is run by the Mars Society, where there are chapters all over the world that promote the dream to colonize Mars. And it was set up initially by a man called Robert Zubrin. There was initial talk of an Irish chapter for the Mars Society being set up, but I think it kind of fell by the wayside. But anyway, and there's about 10 or 15 of these simulated missions around the world. A lot of them are connected with a space agency, so people like myself can't go. But there are others that if you're associated with a research centre and you submit a reasonably solid a series of research activities, then you can qualify, and we did. So we applied to the Mars Desert Research Station, and late on in the application process I was asked to contribute as this artist and communicator, and I said, I want to document these things, because most of the videos that I had seen about the Mars Desert Research Station were all very scientific and all very, we did this, we achieved this, we achieved this, we achieved. And I was like, I don't believe it. I think, like, I want to hear about the day-to-day living of these places. There's no way everything is that perfect and rosy. And I wanted to kind of tell the human side of it and explain it from the inside out. So that was my rationale, that's what I applied, and we got in. So next thing, anyway, I have to fundraise a way of getting to Utah, to the desert, and the landscape there is incredible. There is nothing, I mean nothing, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles. So there's national parks around it, and in the middle of the national parks there's this area that has been, it's famous for dinosaur fossils everywhere, dinosaur bones and dinosaur fossils. So there's nothing for miles and miles around. And this is where the Mars Desert Research Station is. It's in Utah. So you can fly to Denver, and then you can fly to Grand Junction, but I didn't. I chose to get a Greyhound bus to Grand Junction. So it took me 2 days to get to Grand Junction, and then I met the rest of my crewmates in Grand Junction, and then we hired a four-wheel drive, and we then drove to Hanksville, and Hanksville is the nearest town to the Mars Desert Research Station. And actually, this room has about 10 times the population of Hanksville. It is literally one street with a petrol station on one end and a shop. And the shop gives you your supplies before you go in. And this was the street here, and I have one more, yeah, and there is the Mars Desert Research Station. So it's way off. So it's completely off-road. There's rocks and rubble and everything. So there, we were crew 173, which means there was 172 crews before me. And the way it works is that the previous crew come out, they pick you up at the store, you pick up your food, they pick you up at the store in the in-house four-wheel drive, you follow them in. It takes about an hour or so to get through all these rocks and everything like that. You arrive, you spend one night together, the next morning they go, and then your mission begins. And the length of the mission can only be 15 days, or as we call sols. And a sol is a day on Mars because, you know, an orbit of Mars is not the same as an orbit of Earth, so you can't count the days similarly. Although we were actually on Earth, but very quickly I thought I was on Mars. So this was our patch. You know, every time you have a mission, every time there's a human manned mission, there's always a patch design, so that was our design. So Prima Expedition 173 was our official name, and they were the list of our astronauts, or not astronauts, analog astronauts. And one name never made it, so the third one in Pons. So Arnaud was actually the guy that organised everything, and he was our commander. And he had just started a PhD in Purdue University. And about a month before we went in, he was told that he had to sit an exam, and that it was right bang in the middle of our 15-day mission. So he said, oh, I'll do the exam and then I'll come in. And the more I was going in and realised how extreme it was, I knew we would never see him. So he never made it, so there's only ever 5 of us. And we did have a very strict scientific protocol. We kind of had 3 main aims. One was to test the feasibility of building homes on Mars, because if we are going to live on Mars as a colony, how are we going to build anything? Because there's no plumbers, there's no ESB, there's no water, there's nothing on this planet. So we have to be completely self-sufficient. So we have to think of a way of building our own walls. So the best way to do that is 3D printing, which of course has become a massive solution for a lot of troubleshooting in terms of you know, living in extreme environments. So what some of my crewmates did was they prepared a modular brick design, and using the 3D printer that was there and the filament that was there, we planned to build a wall composed of 41 bricks, because we reckoned that's how long we would have in order to build this wall. And then we would test them, and I'll tell you more about the brick design in a minute. And then the second thing was to grow food on Mars. I can tell you more about that, but we basically had one set of plants that were being grown in soil, in natural light, and another set of plants that were being grown in an artificial light in a solution that was seeded with nutrients that should give a plant enough in order to survive. And the light was at the wavelength that's believed to be able to sustain growth and germination, all those kind of things. And then the training your mind for Mars never happened because Arnaud never came. And then my role was inspire others to promote STEM careers and also to tell the story of our mission from start to finish. So once we got accepted, I started giving them homework about, like, sending me movies about, like, preparations and why you're going and talking to your family and everything like that. And I catalogued the whole thing as we met for the first time, as we went in, our first day. And I had a series of GoPros. I had so many GoPros on the go and a series of SD cards. So my job was to download them every day, recharge all the GoPros, make a report every day, clear the SD cards, recharge all the GoPros and have them ready for the next day, and take loads and loads and loads of photographs. And this was our crew. This was us. This is crew 173. So international crew. So you had Roy from Israel. He is a very well-known geologist in his country. He works in the Weizmann Institute and he specialises in the geology of Mars. Michaela is a very well-established astrobiologist who now runs High Seas, which is another and probably better known, better established Analogue facility in Hawaii. Rick at the back, Rick is from Australia and Rick is an astrobiologist. Idris from France and Morocco is an engineer, and he wanted to bring a prototype solar generator with him to test, but it failed the US customs, so he couldn't bring it in. And he actually just displayed the same prototype at CES, which is the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. He had his own stand and everything there, so he's really doing it. And then there was me. And the really interesting thing was Roy had, like, all this press conference and, like, all these news items and stuff about him before he went, and had loads of funding, as did Michaela. Like, they were kind of superstars in their country, and Idris. And when I left, it was like, I'm going Ireland. And it was like Ireland was saying, yeah, turn off the immersion heater, you know, like that was the sum total of response that I got. And make sure you turn the lights out, Neve, you know. Do you tidy your room? That was kind of the attitude that I had. But it was nice because there was no pressure on me, you know. And for all of us engineers who like schematics, because I certainly like this diagram, this is where we lived. So let's talk about Mars for a second. So an analogue facility allows you to simulate some things, not all things. So we can't simulate the gravity. Gravity on Mars is less than that of Earth, so we can't fix that. The atmosphere of Mars is you know, a lot more hostile than Earth. Carbon dioxide predominantly very cold, so we would simulate that in terms of that every time we went outside we would suit up. We did not have proper spacesuits. I mean, obviously to live on Mars you would need a spacesuit that would have to have a lot of layers of protection. We had what are known as just flight suits, just to sort of give a nod. So every time we went outside on an EVA or an extravehicular activity, we went in this. And this is like these are just boiler suits. Every mission has one, and you have your patch. And this was our one. So that's the patch I showed you earlier on. So every time we went outside, we would suit up in this, and then you would have gear and everything to suit up. I'll show you a video of that in a second. And the ground floor would be where you would go in and go out. I'll have video of that in a second. And at the back, then you had another airlock, and that was to do your engineering checks. There was an area where you would suit up, and there was a maintenance area, and then there was downstairs there was a toilet, and there was a shower which we never used, and the toilet which was disgusting. We only flushed for number 2s, not number 1s, because we only had a set ration of water and a set ration of food. Upstairs then was sort of where you would do your work on your computers. I'll show you a video in a second. And we all had our own stateroom. I love it. It's such a funny word. Think of an immersion heater, where you put your immersion heater. That's kind of what you had. No windows. Hot air was blowing through each of the rooms, and it was really suffocating and very dehydrating. And you just had a couple of meters to yourself. So you spent the whole time in each other's company. So I'm going to show you some videos now. So this is the exterior, and I took these near the end just because I knew I wanted to get them. So that's me with the Irish flag, and I'm kind of acting, walking. You know, I have the camera here, obviously. That's the van we came in on. You don't use it when you're there, you just use it to come in and come out. So we would have used it on our last day to get the next crew coming in. So that's the 2-story schematic I showed you. To its right is something that looks like a greenhouse, because it is a greenhouse, but because we're on Mars, it's not called a greenhouse, it's called a green habitat. And the house is not called a house, it's called a habitat. And you'll see some tunnels there, and the tunnels are basically the only areas that you can go outside without having to suit up, because it takes so long to suit up. You know, when you have to tell somebody that dinner's ready, you can't be getting into a suit for 40 minutes to say, your dinner's ready, and then take it off and come back in again. So you are allowed to use these tunnels to get between the green hab and the habitat, and then as I pan right, you'll see the science dome, and that's where we conducted our experiments, where we tried the 3D printer many a time, and then just beyond that and behind the science dome is the observatory, and you'll see the solar panels there as well. And these are the tunnels. I hope this isn't too loud, but these are the tunnels. So it's really gritty, really dirty, very muddy. It's red. There's a sulphur smell the whole time because there's a lot of sulphur in the soil. And these corridors would just take you between one place and another. It's extremely cold because it's the winter in the desert. Some days were snowing, which you didn't mind, because the ground was hard. This is the science dome. So it was a pretty well equipped science dome. You know, it had a laminar flow lab, it had a decent microscope, a lot of sieves and stuff because there was a lot of soil analysis there. I loved this window because you would really feel like you were on Mars and you'd look through that window. It was mad, really mad. And every crew would leave their favourite stone. There were stones everywhere. Whenever you go on an EVA, you go, oh, there's a lovely stone. And you wouldn't know what to do with it, so you'd always like leave it on the ledge or something. And then, you know, those kind of door handles would make you feel like you're on Mars. Then this is the engineering. So you see it's filthy. So those two white containers, that's our ration of water, which gets pumped in every day. And then I'll show you a little bit of the interior. So that's the engineering lock, and you go down, you go in then, in there. That's the experiment with the soil samples that have water. And then this is the door into the other airlock where you would suit up. So this is where you would put your helmet on and your backpack. That's my suit there. And you see the helmets. I'll explain them in a second as well. And you would suit up in the double door section of the airlock. Because obviously, if you are on Mars, you can't just open the door because all your oxygen's going to go out. You have to use a two-door system. So then we go up the strangest set of stairs I've ever seen in my life. I fell down them so many times, you've no idea. Because you can't wear your shoes indoors, you have to wear slippers because it's the only way to keep the place clean. So this is upstairs, again, really basic. There's red dust everywhere. You can't get away from it. So you try to sweep and keep this as clean as possible. So this is where we ate and where we did our work. We had a ton of reports to have through to mission control every single day. Standard kitchen. You see the pump. You see the steps up there. That's up to the water that you have to pump up every day. This was my stateroom. So it is effectively the room where your immersion heater is. I don't know, maybe 2 meters wide, maybe 3-4 meters long. No windows, hot air blowing in. I couldn't close that door because the migraines I got there was unbelievable. I was just like chronically dehydrated between the hot air and the lack of water. And kitchen area standard. The only thing is what you eat is very different. So anybody who goes on a camping holiday or anyone who's been on a long mission, you know, away from home would know these. These are just tins of powdered stuff. So that's powdered egg. So we powder broccoli, powdered cabbage, powdered butter, tang, you know, everybody talks about tang, powdered orange, powdered milk, everything, you know. But it was good. It was a very salty diet. I didn't mind it. To be honest with you, food is lost on me, so I was actually lucky in that regard. And then in terms of the experiments, we used this, the worst, most useless piece of crap 3D printer I've ever used in my life, but it was the one that was on site, and I really liked when things went wrong because it is how it would be if you were living on Mars. There's nothing you can do if things go wrong. So you would start the day having a great plan and you wanted to do this and this and this. Never happened. And our biggest bane of our lives was that 3D printer. We think it was because of the temperature, that it was so cold outside that the filament would freeze or something, and the heater, you know, that's supposed to melt the filament just didn't work. And so this was our brick. The brick looked like a Lego brick. There was 2 sections to it because if you were to build a wall on Mars, you have to protect yourself from radiation as much as it being, you know, something that's strong. So there were 2 sections. One section was full of soil, which we went out to collect samples when we would go out in EVA, and the other part The other section was for water, and that was to protect us from radiation as an insulation. So there was kind of two phases to that. So we spent a lot of time collecting soil samples and grading them and sieving them in order to have the right size of soil particles for the bricks. And this was Roy's job a lot, and Rick would help him a lot. And then they were also looking at carbonates and stuff to, as if they were on Mars, to look for water on Mars. And so that's a sample of the bricks that we printed. It's also the total number of bricks that we printed. We didn't even print 2. We printed 1 3/4, but we did run the experiment on the day with 1 3/4 bricks, and we just cried laughing. I actually taped the laughing. We're just going, this is ridiculous. But I like it because it shows you, when you're in the field, you can have all the best intentions. You can't, it's not the same, the timelines aren't the same. You take away your creature comforts and everything gets difficult. The second experiment was growing food on Mars, so Rick led that up in the greenhouse, or the green hab, and then Michaela held up. Obviously hugely important to us, and it was a task every day that you would have to pump water from one of those 2 outside tanks up to the top of the tank, which was sort of above us, and you'd have to monitor its use. And the pump was really basic. The pump was like this, right? That was the sound. And that was the sound of when you would use the water. The pump up into the tank was actually quite quiet, but every time you would use water, you'd hear, right? So every time you washed your hands, every time you washed up, every time Rick would water the plants, every time you'd flush the toilet for number 2, So effectively, you would know when somebody went to the toilet. And you would also know when they would have a poo, because nobody flushed the toilet for number 1s. And so everything became, you would just begin to know everybody's habits intricately, and there was no privacy whatsoever. And the thing that annoyed me the most was I would be lying in bed at like 2 o'clock in the morning with this hot air blowing into my face, no circulation, trying to get asleep, so many noises of fans and everything, and somebody would get up and go to the toilet and they'd flush the loo, and then it'd be like, and then we were all up, you know. But you'd still have to get up at 7 o'clock because you had so much to do for your day. So water was this really kind of really important commodity. And then the other thing is the previous crew, when you're on that first day with them, they give you a lot of information about what to do, what not to do, and it's almost too much. But one thing they told us to do was to cover our plates in tin foil to save on water. So they very kindly cooked for us the first night we were there, and it was lovely. They cooked a lovely meal, and they were all there with their tin foil on their plates, and we had kind of some sort of slushy soup or something, and I remember I punctured my tinfoil, and I was feeling really bad, and I said, what do you do if you puncture your tinfoil? And they're going, well, you just use the same plate. And I'm like, so you don't wash your plates? No, we just covered them in tinfoil. And I was like, okay, that's one step too far, I can't take that. That's like a microbiology, that is just like a disaster waiting to happen. That's just too much. But yeah, you pick up strange habits from each other. And the other thing was they seemed really weird. They seemed like they were all feral when I met them. They all seemed a bit unhinged on that last night. And I remember kind of looking at them going, they're really weird. And I'll just talk about what we were like by the end of this as well. So yeah, so it was Michaela's job to look at the plants on her side. So they had spinach seeds which were germinated, and they were comparing how quickly they grew. And so Rick would grow them in the green hab, and this was going to be a test for about. It would be a test that was supposed to be longer than our 15 days there, our 15 sols. There was supposed to be a test for 2 or 3 crew afterwards. And as part of our experimental protocol, we wrote that in, and we got agreement from the Mars Desert Research Society. The first crew were very good, and so that you were able to kind of keep track of what they were doing, because you'd get the emails that people were being fed into mission control after your mission was over. And then we would ask them, how are the plants getting on? And then they were like, oh, sorry, we forgot. So that experiment went out the door as well. So that was a waste of time. And also, Rick planted a load of vegetables, fresh fruit and vegetables, for the next coming crews. And because crew 174 halfway through forgot to water the plants, then all of that was a waste of time. And that is the reality of living in the extremes. But the day-to-day life was very tough. but it was kind of like, it was kind of normal. What really set it apart was every time you would put that suit on and you would go outside on what was termed as an EVA. An EVA stands for extravehicular activity, and it's just one of those acronyms that's used in the space sector. So it's basically suiting up to go outside. And we would go outside every day, unless it was snowing, and to do that you would have to contact Mission Control. And Mission Control were a voluntary group of people that ran the Mars Desert Research Station, and you would email them and say, we're thinking of going on an EVA tomorrow, is that okay? And they'd say yay or nay, and depending on whether they'd come back to you. And of course, because we're on Mars and they're on Earth, you would also have to respect that 12-minute delay between comms, so you'd always have to wait 12 minutes before you could get back. So the quickest you'd be in touch would be 24 minutes. So this is what it's like. These are, you know the roundy bins that you can touch when in your house, right? So they're made from those bins, and I like this as well. So somebody cut one of those in half and put a Perspex front on it, but the back of the helmet is actually one of those bins. And so initially when they were built first, the Perspex was lovely and clean, but over time they get scratched and everything, and they're built on like a stainless steel collar, which has a mechanism that you put the helmet on, and you can only put it on when you connect to the backpack, which is also encased in steel. So it's extremely uncomfortable, and after about 10 minutes it starts to really chafe on your neck. It hasn't been chamfered or anything. Very, very heavy, and your centre of gravity is off. Plus on top of that, that's the sum total vision that you have after using toothpaste to keep the inside of your helmet clean. But a lot of the times you can't see out. And on top of that then, you're driving these ATVs around. That visual is clear because I now have a camera on my lap like this, and I'm filming there because it's a flat surface as we approach the station. But a lot of the times you're going over very jagged edges. And the rule is that you're not allowed to go fast, and you have to keep watch of the person in front of you and the person behind you. And you're in constant radio contact with each other and also with back in the habitat. So two people have to stay in the habitat at any one time as well. Because in case of emergency, you're miles from nowhere, like there's nothing. And I also am not great with heights. Thankfully, because of this mission, I've overcome it. But you try that, like, so they're all like scampering up the hill, and the surface of the geology of this place was really weird. It looked hard, but when you went to walk on it, it was sand that kind of came away. So you would be thinking that you could get your foot on something and then it would all fall away. So I was always scared. Every time I went out in AVA, I was scared. The closest thing to it is learning to ski, which I hated, and it's that thing, if you've got so many things to think about at the same time, and it's actually very dangerous, and you could really hurt yourself. So I was always in a state of anxiety and high alert at all times, you know, like trying to even drive the ATV with heavy gloves on and that rucksack. You can't sit back, you have to sit forward, and that helmet, that in itself was difficult. Even using gloves, like they're like those heavy gloves because it's so cold out. I had a camera and I was trying to take pictures with this helmet in front of me, so thankfully I got a wide angle lens just before I left, and I would just like kind of do my light settings before I would leave the hab, and I would just point, because I didn't know what I was getting, and I would just put it on a wide shot, and then I had a high resolution on the photograph so that I was able to cut into it and get what I like. And we had a daily routine. This was the kind of the day, this is like I had these everywhere, like these time lapses. This was in the Science Dome. So the day would go that for a few hours somebody would be in the Science Dome. We had radios to keep in touch with each other. Somebody else would be in the main hab. We did a lot of, I recorded a lot of interviews with them. I recorded a lot of audio of us around the table and talking. And one day, this really weird thing happened. Because Idris was such a big deal in France, two reporters from their like big station, F4 came, and they spent the day with us, and that was like so weird. And we were only there 15 days. This is probably like day 10, and like I was extremely self-conscious having somebody else there, and I knew by the way they treated us that we'd already gone a little bit mad and kind of stir crazy, and we had created this whole language and this shorthand, and they were like looking at us like we were weird. And we gave them lunch, and you could see them kind of going, you know, and you know, we had their bowl in tin foil, and they just thought we were cracked. And when they came back, two of the lads took them out on an EVA, and they came back, and I made them a cup of coffee, they wouldn't come upstairs, and they sat downstairs, kind of near the door. I think they were dying to leave, and I left them the coffee, and as I was going up that crazy stairs, I looked back, and I could see the two of them going, like they weren't going to touch it, like they thought we were disgusting. And it was a real moment for me to go, oh my God, yeah, that's what we are now, we're disgusting. And we made these kind of radio, people would ask us questions, and I made these kind of recordings because I didn't want anyone to hear us in real time. I wanted it to feel like we were somewhere else. So we would do all these recordings. So yes, we made things like that. This is the water tank. This was like, this is a daily routine, and we would spend a day outside, or we would do day reports if we were stuck in. But at the end of every day, the clock was on us because we always had to gather material, and we always had to make a ton of reports for mission control. So the whole thing is recorded, and it's reported on the Mars Desert Research Station website, and you have to give a final report. So you're always on the go. And the one thing we always did try to do together was we would always try to eat together, and I think that that was a huge part of the bonding process. Like somebody cooking for you, and the lads were great at cooking. I'm a useless cook, and Michaela's the same, but the lads would spend ages like preparing. I don't know how they did it with this freeze-dried crap that we had in our cupboards, but they did it. And it kind of really held us together. And we would have breakfast together, and the day would start with like a list of what we wanted to do. We would never do it, and then we would stop in the middle of the day, and we would have lunch, and then we would start the rest of the day, and then we would have dinner together. And this is video of us on the very last day where we're tidying up before the last crew came. At this stage we have a total shorthand. We're just going all through the radio. We're making weird sounds. We have all this slang, shorthand. And I, at this stage, feel completely connected to these people. I feel like they're my brothers and my sisters. I would know that everyone was in every night when I saw 5 pairs of boots, because you'd lock up every night. So it was like, put out the milk, you know. It became our own little world. And I remember in the middle of this, Roy was cleaning his room, and this was only like Sol 5 or 6, so we weren't even a week there. And he came out with money, and I remember kind of going, God, that's mad. Like, I got so used to not needing money, and it seems so stupid to have it in such a short period of time. Like, to have everything and need nothing is it's a lovely feeling to live so simply, and I really, really embraced it. And I'm not an outdoorsy person. I love nature, but I was never like a camper or, you know, somebody who lived in the extreme, and I was amazed how much that impacted on me. So the last day came, and we went out and got the next crew. We told them about the tinfoil plates, whether they wanted to do or not. We told them to flush only for number 2s, not number 1s. We were allowed light a fire outside that night because our mission had finished, so we were allowed to go outside, which was like, if anyone's been in the Gaeltacht, being home and being able to speak English and realising, oh my God, somebody's going to kick me home, but then they don't. That's what it was like. It was so weird that we could go anywhere. We could go on the ATVs, and we lit a fire that night, and Idris is an astronomer, and he gave us a light show with his laser pointer. And the crew 174 were terrified of us. They thought we were feral, they thought we were insane, and we probably were. We actually were. And we decided together that we'd get up the next morning and watch the sunrise together, which we did. And because we were never able to get up and just do something like that, because it would always take too long to put your suits on. And that was the last thing we did together as a crew. And this was a picture of us. That was our last picture together. And the amazing thing was that when we came back, Crew 174 were making coffee, and they were making breakfast in my house. You know what I mean? And it was like, you know, last night you were my guests, like, what the hell? And of course then I realised, yeah, it's over, we're done. And we packed up, and off we headed off, and we went and toured some of the national parks in the area, and then Idris and Roy headed off. They had to go to Las Vegas, they were staying in America for a lot longer, and that was it. We were broken up and we missed each other terribly. We spent days like on WhatsApp keeping in touch, and I still have this huge outpouring of love for them all. And myself and Michaela had a spat just near the end. It was just a cultural difference, and like we were like, I'll never work with you again, I'll never work with you again, you know, and it was like a real, like, I was dreading when I see her again. And like 3 or 4 months later we were both working together on the Space Studies programme, and I didn't know how I was going to feel when I saw her, and I just felt this love. I'd be like, it was so stupid, I know, you know, and I'd die for her, you know what I mean? I'd actually die for her, and we're still really good pals. And the same with Roy. Roy went back to Israel, and the next year he set up his own Analogue mission in the desert, in the Negev desert, and invited me last February to be with them on their first mission. So they've got their own Analogue facility now, and Rick went on, finished his masters, and Idris I think he's going to be an entrepreneur with his solar panel, you know. So it was a really interesting experience, and when I came home I didn't realise how much it would profoundly affect my whole perception of my life. It made me realise that I'm hardier than I thought I was, and more resilient, and also that I need very little to be happy. I've changed, you know, the way I use water is different. I got rid of my car, I no longer have a car. I want to give away everything. I remember the first morning when we went back to Hanksville, to that town, we were in the diner, which was a kip, but to us it was like a palace, and we had coffee and pancakes. It was like, oh my God. And we all kind of went to the loo before we headed off on our trip away, and I went into the toilet. It was only just for a wee, and I left, as I always do, and then I went, oh no, I have to flush now. So I went back and I flushed. And I was really shocked how much water was wasted from just, what, half a litre of my fluid, maybe a litre. It seemed ridiculous that we waste that much water every time we flush a toilet. And then I went to put my hands under the sink, and I was used to, and this was like, and I was like, oh, turn it off! And I couldn't turn it off because it was an automatic one. And it's really made me much more aware of things like that. And then I went into my apartment, and I was really embarrassed that I own 20 towels, 10 duvet sets, 7 cushions, and it was like, I am never buying anything again until all of these things have been used, or until I've given them up. So it really did have an impact on me, and it's really encouraged me to keep going. So I think I'll finish with that, because it's 9:10, and thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you. Maybe I might start the ball rolling by asking, how close to really living on Mars do you think it is? Is it halfway there? Is it...
No way. No, not at all. Like, you know, you can decide how far you want to take your simulation. And we decided that we were all in, like that every time we went outside we'd suit up and all that kind of stuff. And but it's very possible, you know, you can do it any way you like. It's not, you decide yourselves how far you want to take it. But no, I mean, I think it would be far more difficult. I mean, you know, if we fell, you nick your suit, big deal. You get a crack in your helmet, big deal. But like if you're on Mars, that's game over. Yeah. But it gives you, what I liked about it, it gave me an idea of how everything has to slow down, and how much you take for granted just by living in a world where there's electricity and there's water and there's all sorts of stuff. So it really gives you an appreciation of that, and it also gives you an appreciation of how difficult it is to do the simplest of things when you don't have access to this workforce of people that are there to help you and assist you. So in that way it was realistic, and it was realistic in terms of what it feels like not to be in a society. That was realistic.
Questions any from the floor? Mostly what you were talking there about was non-technical stuff.
Yes.
I was wondering, was there a free flow of air between the outside? You weren't in an airlock or anything like that?
Well, you are and you aren't. I mean, I actually don't think it's fully you know, I don't think there's a full airlock there. I mean, there's no vacuum between the two airlocks and stuff. I think it's just too simulated. But there are doors there, but there's no kind of tubing or anything. But the air that was blown in, there is like a, what do they call those eaves, like the bird eaves? So there is circulation coming in at the very, very top. But the air is heated with a propane gas, and the only form of circulation would be through natural circulation. So you don't have any windows, but then you will be opening and closing those doors. And during the day, when you're going, the engineering lock, the inner door would just be left open a lot of the time, but not the main airlock door.
Was there machinery to control the carbon
No.
dioxide, the oxygen,
No.
the air, anything like that?
No, nothing like that. No.
What about the power supply in the building?
The power supply was, we had been one of the newest groups that were gone 100% on solar power, so they had a pretty sophisticated panel, and that was our main power source. There wasn't really that much power there though, apart from lighting. What was really it, in the fridge or something? Cooking cooker, it was like it was a gas cooker? No, it wasn't, it was an electric cooker because it was useless. Yeah, it was an electric cooker and a fridge and a kettle. So there was nothing really there that required much electricity. So we were required to monitor all of that every single day, consumption levels and stuff like that.
Did you have internet?
We had internet for a very small period of time, and it was awful. Awful. I mean, oh my God, it was so slow. And my job as the journalist, the crew journalist, was that I had to upload at least 5 photographs in the daily report. Oh dear Lord. And you could only they could only be like about 52 kilobytes or something like that. So, and then I set myself a task to put up information on Facebook, because I wanted to keep our story current. And theoretically, there is internet after, from a certain time of the night, and some people choose to use it or not. Now, we didn't really use it, but I had to use it to upload on Facebook. So you'd have the 2 hours for mission control, and then after that you had internet for the rest of the evening, but you had a daily usage, and it would be gone like that. So once it was gone, it was gone.
They rationed that.
They rationed that. They rationed it for you. And so I would just be desperately trying to get my photographs uploaded or my sound files or whatever it was, but I would literally spend 4 hours a night uploading
Where
stuff.
did that keep in touch with family?
No.
So really wants to close
Yeah. But again, Dave, you can decide how far you want to take that or not. You know what I mean? We decided not to, but there is the scope that you can, if you want. You know. Hi, Al. I think well, there's an annual conference every year run by the Mars Society. I think it's in Washington every year, and Robert Zubrin is sort of the main guy behind the Mars Society. How is it funded? I know initially that the research facility there was half funded by Elon Musk. This is before SpaceX, as far as I know, and yeah, because it's 2000, and some union funded the other half. Some local union funded the other half, but. And then we all have to pay fees to go there. So for students it was $600. I had to pay $2,000. I had the most to pay of all of them. And that kind of pays for the upkeep. But actually how the Mars Society is funded, I don't know, because I'm not a member. So, yeah.
Yeah, to follow up Dave's first question there.
Yeah.
I just need to get a confirmation before I ask the question.
Okay.
And then you were there on January the 14th.
Yes.
And unless it was snowing,
It
weren't allowed to go out.
Yes.
So you were so what temperatures were you at when you were there in Utah?
At night time we were very cold. At night time it would be like -17 or something like that. And then during the day it would be close to 0 to 2 degrees or something like that. But then once the afternoon came up, it would get like 10 or 11. It was okay.
Right, so
But you'd be sweating in the suit, you know.
Right, so if you're on Mars,
Yeah.
I believe, but I don't know, you can tell me, it's -20, I believe, on average.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So why are you in the desert doing the thing instead of being in the tundra? Now I believe you should be up in the tundra doing all these exercises because that's the temperature you're going to be at. But I believe they have some going Iceland and others going deep down into the sea,
Yes.
which I imagine would give you something of the pressure or
Yes.
the temperature that you might be experiencing.
Yes.
But why are you...
Because of the geology. So each research station has a different specialisation. So the reason why the facility was picked for there is for the geological landscape. So it attracts the geology and the astrobiologists because it allows them go in the field. So for extreme temperatures, there's other facilities. So the Mars Desert Research Station also has another facility called FMars, and that's up in Canada, near where there's another one where NASA's is. And then there is one underwater. There is one in Florida, as far as I know, and that's called NEMO. And an Irishman, actually Mark O'Griefa was involved in NEMO. So they all have different realities that you're trying to simulate, but you can't have all of them at the same time on Earth. You have to pick which one.
You imagine that's -20. You have to get that at least as your average temperature on the day, and you go out to your geology -20, and you do whatever you have to do quickly. Yeah, but give me a place that looks like Mars with those temperatures, and we'll go there. Yeah, with the polar, and so that's what the cold ones are for, you know. So they all have their different specialities, and then you've got the lava tubes in Hawaii, and so they all simulate different extremes. I can tell you're not impressed. Yes.
My question is really follow on from this one here, which is there an anticipation of simulating more closely what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Because the bit where the next crew decided not to water food for the next 6 months, usually, so the fact that you begin to realise the issues around that, and then how that psychologically and behaviourally affects people.
Yes. I think that's a failing in the construct of the design of that facility, which is that people stay for 15 sols. So there's only so much you can do. I mean, personally, I'd love to stay for a longer one, like for 60 days, so high season Hawaii, for instance. Their design is about long durational analog missions. So it has nothing to do with the weather or the climate, even though they're simulating Mars. It is to do with the psychological effects of being in a confined space for up to a year, some of their studies. So they're a strong psychological one. So I agree with you. I think that they're grand, but I think we have to get more rigorous and more thorough as we go on, and I think we learn an awful lot along the way. There's one particular group I think are doing really interesting work, and they're the Austrian Space Forum, and they're all about the spacesuit design, and they go to different places. So they were in Oman last year, and next year I think they're going to be in the Negev desert working with DMARS, which is the facility that Roy set up, and their whole thing is about proper spacesuit design, mobility, and it's really, really heavy. Like the spacesuit I think is up to 72 kilos at this stage, and it's all about making those differences and making the distinction between what is feasible and what isn't feasible. So yeah. Yep. Well, what we were doing was just a 3D printer. But if you look at the design for the lunar habitat, the proposed habitat for the first one on the moon, so that will be deployed by a spacecraft which will have like an outer casing, and at the back of it will be kind of like a tent which will self-inflate, and on board within that casing there are 3D printers, and the 3D printers are designed to scoop up the regolith, which is the surface of the moon, and actually build a kind of like the structure of like the bones of birds, like a kind of a hexagonal structure over time, and build the outer casing over that dome. And that's probably what will happen long term in terms of growing, or not growing, I mean printing homes, theoretically, yeah. But like we were just had a modular brick system, just to say in its simplest terms, is it possible to even build a wall? And clearly we just proved that it wasn't, with our equipment anyway.
I might just ask one final question.
Yeah.
Do the powers that be, NASA, SpaceX, do they monitor what's going on closely in all the stations, this station in particular?
Yeah, they do. I mean, yeah, they do. You have different groups going. I think the great advantage of this one is it provides an opportunity for people who aren't involved in a space agency to practice what it would be like to be in the field as a geologist or as an astrobiologist. But there are lots of research papers that come out of that facility, and they get reported and shared at conferences like the Astronautical Congress. So there is merit in it. But I feel it's more, for me it provided me more of an idea of what it would be like to live in extreme circumstances. But I think if we really are to simulate it, it has to be an awful lot more rigorous and an awful lot tougher.
Baby steps.
I think baby steps, yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, if you want to ask me questions in person, she'll be here for a few minutes. I'm just going to briefly tell you what's happening in the sky in the next few events. But it's been a fascinating tale of what it might be like to live on Mars. We wish Neve every success in the future, and hopefully you'll come over to the Lombard and have a further chapter as well. In the meantime, please give a very warm thank you to Niamh Shaw for our
Thank you.
So don't leave your seats, because we have the raffle as well. Someone's got that beautiful European Southern Observatory calendar, which I've had a look through. I think you can buy them online as well, and you're welcome to have a look at it before we raffle it off. So briefly, let me tell you what's happening in the sky. Most of the details are in the magazine with lots of diagrams. That's on sale outside for €5. Or you go to Eason's or Dunn stores and buy it for nearly €6. So cheaper here tonight. And if you sign up, as I said, we'll give it to you free. So events coming up. Our next big event is on January 29th at Astronomy Ireland's headquarters in Blanchardstown, where we'll be setting up telescopes at 7 o'clock to show you the moon, or if you've got a telescope for Christmas or know anyone who did and having difficulty using it, even assembling it, they can come along there. So we'll be there for the workshop regardless of weather, and the moon viewing if it's clear. We'll also be using that to promote the fact that exactly 1 week later, because it's Wednesday the 29th of January, exactly 1 week after that, Wednesday the 5th of February, sees our evening classes kicking off. They actually take place in this very room. Dr. Dave, who's giving our classes now from Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies, a professional astronomer, but it's at popular level. It's the same as all people. There's a little form inside the leaflets you probably got on the way in. If you'd like to take a few of those for friends, please do so. If you're interested in doing the evening classes, you can sign up now. It's enrolling right away. There's usually 50 to 100 people who take them, and over 8 Wednesday nights for about 2 hours with a break in the middle, it will tell you everything you ever wanted to know about the universe but were afraid to ask. So the sun, the moon, the planets, the black holes, cosmology, and you can ask questions as well of a real research astronomer. No maths, no knowledge of science required. I'm sure you'll enjoy that. I think they're probably the longest running, certainly one of the most popular astronomy courses in the country. They've been running for decades now. Thousands of people have taken classes. So that's February the 5th. And then our next lecture will be the following Monday, February the 10th, which I'll close by telling you about in a minute. Let me just tell you what's happening in the sky briefly before all that. A rough overview is that Venus is dominating the evening skies. You can't have missed it. It's blazing away there in the southwest after sunset. It'll stay there for January, February and March, and only disappear around April. So we're going to get a great view of that. The other planets, bright planets, are behind the Sun, Jupiter and Saturn, so we'll ignore those for the time being. Coming to Mars, we have Mars in the morning sky. It was near the moon. It was in the magazine last month. I remember taking pictures of it. You had to get up quite early, around 6 o'clock in the morning or so, to see it. And it'll be doing that again. In fact, it's doing it on the 20th of January, Monday morning around 8 a.m, Tuesday morning also around 8 a.m. The moon will be not particularly close to Mars, but it's a nice thin crescent moon. It should look a really spectacular sight to the naked eye, and lovely in binoculars as well. There's diagrams for that in the magazine. And of course, there's a bright star called Antares, which means the rival of Mars. And Mars actually passing close to that star. It's the brightest star in Scorpius, and you can actually compare the two to see, is it a rival? Mars is quite far from the Earth at the moment. It will be extremely close in October this year. So right now it's actually should be a little bit dimmer than that star, maybe half as bright, but you'll have to check that for yourself. They're closest actually on this Saturday, the 18th, but they're fairly close for a good few days either side. Another bright star, red star, that's of interest at the moment is Betelgeuse, the bright star in Orion. So if you know his belt
and he's got 2 kneecaps, Rigel and Scythe, and 2 shoulders, Bellatrix and Betelgeuse. And Betelgeuse is normally one of the brightest stars in the sky. And if you know the nearby Aldebaran, it's normally much brighter than that, but in fact it's now fainter. It's been fading away. Some people think it might be getting ready to explode. We think one day it will explode. Others think it's just part and parcel of the dying phase of the star, where it'll fade and brighten, fade and brighten. But if it does explode, it'll become as bright as the full moon. What a great media story that would make. So let's hope it blows itself to bits. So that's Betelgeuse. Venus is putting on a bit of an extra show because it's going to creep up on the planet Neptune. Neptune is hard to see. Even if you've got a pair of binoculars, you need to be an expert to spot Neptune. It's that dim. But Venus is going to pass 4 arc minutes. Now, what's 4 arc minutes? Well, the moon is 30 arc minutes across, so it's roughly 1/7, 1/8 or so of the moon's diameter. That is very close. You will see them in the same telescope field of view, let alone a pair of binoculars. You won't see Neptune without optical aid. And that night they're going to, it's in the magazine, there's great diagrams in the magazine showing exactly what that looks like. The closest approach is on Monday the 27th of January, so that's today fortnight. But they'll be close for several nights either side, certainly in the same binocular field of view. And the moon joins the scene around that time as well, just to add to the spectacle. So I'll refer you to the diagram. It's a bit complicated to explain in words, but definitely 2 weeks' time you want to be hoping for clear skies and viewing with your binoculars. The chance of Venus, I tried to run this forward, but to get things where they're nice and far from the sun so we can see them and they're any closer, it was taking about 200 years. So it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They will be in the same field of view again in our lifetime, maybe not as far away from the sun, but this is really very special at the end of January. All that's in the magazine, so do get a copy outside if you're not already a member. And if you want to sign up as a member, remember it'll give you those 25 magazines for the price of 12 tonight. You can't do that online or anywhere else. We just bring them along to our various events. That's what to see in the sky. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram to find out any more events that are coming up, both astronomy on, non-astronomy on events. One of them was The Sky at Night, was on BBC last night. It'll be repeated on BBC 4 on Thursday, and they were reviewing what to see in the sky and telling people about how to start with telescopes. It was quite a bit of fun, with Pete Lawrence has given a talk to Astronomy Ireland in the past, as indeed is Chris Lintott, who was always also on the show. So that brings us to the final thing, which is our next lecture. And we have an international speaker coming next on February the 10th. And it's Larry O'Rourke, who some of you will know, because although he works in Spain now, he is actually originally from Mullingar. But he's one of the chief scientists, engineers, for the Plato mission, which is a new mission to find planets around other stars. You've probably heard of Kepler, that helped find thousands of planets, and now there's the TESS satellite that's in the news recently, finding more Earth-like planets. Well, the European Space Agency are going to do it big in a few years' time when they launch Plato and wipe those 2 missions off the board. And he's one of the chief scientists, a man from Mullingar. So he's going to tell us all about what it's going to do and how we might actually get to some of these Earth-like planets orbiting other stars. He's coming all the way from Spain to give the talk, so hopefully you'll come here to join him. That's 8 o'clock, Monday, 10th of January. The tickets for non-members are normally €10, €5 for the members. But as a thank you for everyone coming along tonight, whether you're a member or not, you can buy the tickets outside for €5. If you want to bring a few friends as well, you can get as many tickets as you want. Laura has them outside. So before we get the food over in the Lombard Inn, the last thing we have to do is to raffle off as our door prize this beautiful European Southern Observatory poster. So if you get your tickets ready, I'll ask our speaker to draw the winning ticket. You don't need to rush up at the end. We'll do a little presentation at the very end. So the winning ticket is, do you want to call out, Neve?
It's an orange ticket. Number is 518.
We have a winner? Just raise your hand.
Well done.
Well, congratulations.